Yep.
We might just need a little bit of luck, most certainly. Have to reduce or maybe even stop flying for a while. Well, I can't see the windsock on the airfield from here. Oh yes, I can up to a maximum of 12,000 feet. Today the weather conditions are presenting us with some challenges, and therefore we are hoping to perform a mid-show for you today.
It's time. Time to get ready to experience the aerial skills of one of the world's greatest military parachute display teams. Get your cameras ready, because it's time to introduce the Royal Air Force Falcons.
The team coach, Flight Sergeant Liam Lyons, will be looking out of the door, waiting for the right time to signal to the team to leave the aircraft. You will exit first, then each jumper will follow, exiting every 3 seconds into free fall. And face the skies, get your cameras ready. And there they go, the 2025 Royal Air Force Parachute Display Team, the Falcons. The red smoke trailing from their legs is created by smoke canisters attached to their boots, which were activated at the very last moment before jumping from the aircraft. We can see all 7 canopies have safely deployed and the team immediately begin maneuvering into the main formation. The 2025, the team have been working on a very dynamic and routine over the winter months, and I hope you enjoy the visual spectacle as much as the Royal Air Force Falcons enjoy flying it. They've built this main formation by turning 180 degrees back up to jump on direction. They've now split and now turn 90 degrees towards each other to create the crisscross. With blazing speeds of over 45 miles an hour, the team now immediately begin maneuvering into the very dynamic and signature maneuver, the carousel. This is the team's favourite manoeuvre for flight vast amount of concentration. The T-6 is called to an end today, ourselves, as they immediately begin manoeuvring into the Save It Chase and our final formation for today. You'll see them essentially forming a snake formation, but this time with dynamic left and right turns to position themselves into a landing arena today. You may also see one parachutist at the back there, that is Sergeant Luke Riddle. He is currently flying the Union Jack. As the parachutists approach the sea, there'll be a please, so please put your hands together and give them a huge cheer to encourage them and show your appreciation for the skills demonstrated today by the Royal Air Force Falcons. Approaching the ground now is Flight Sergeant Liam Elias, Sergeant Andy Link, Sergeant Mike Atkinson, Sergeant Martin Shield, Sergeant Karen Ho, and Sergeant Greg Angelini. As you can see, it's quite windy on the news edge. But please give it up for our Union Jack flyer, Sergeant Luke Rio! As we mentioned earlier, this is the first of two displays we'll see the Battle of Britain Memorial flight today. So delighted to welcome them back after a very, very difficult year. They were much missed, but for very understandable reasons. So I think this is going to be very, very special indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight.
Keep us warm and
fabulous sound as the 2,300 horsepower Pratt & Whitney double wasp radial engine is really wound up in a dive and showing us here something of one of the attributes that made this such an outstanding aeroplane, namely the fact that because it's so big and so heavy, it was an aeroplane that you could build up a lot of energy fly through, particularly on an air-to-ground tasking, and then climb rapidly away. This was, however, also an excellent air-to-air dogfighter, perhaps not as good as the likes of the Spitfire or the Mustang as a close-in dogfighter, because it is a large, quite bulky aeroplane. But everyone I've ever spoken to who's flown a P-47 praises this aircraft's handling characteristics to the hilt. And as a gun platform for example, air-to-ground strafing missions, very steady, very stable. And it was those sort of attributes that meant it had such a great role after the P-51 Mustang came to the fore in the US Air Force. Deployed to Europe with the US Army Air Forces in the Second World War. There was the P-51 Mustang, we'll see in a bit, and the very distinctive twin-engine, twin-boom Lockheed P-38 Lightning. And of all those three, it was the P-47 that played the biggest role in the lead-up to D-Day, softening up the German Luftwaffe and its bases on the ground. Black and white invasion stripes applied to the wings of the fuselage, which were painted on as an identifier in the hours leading up to D-Day to enable the easy distinction between Allied and Axis aeroplanes. Charismatic aeroplane, beautifully flown, and a very, very important aeroplane for us to have as part of the lineup of airworthy warbirds on hand with different UK operators. Such was the role this aircraft had flying out of the UK during the Second World War with US Army Air Forces units and overseas. And of course in the escort role that is so important. We're not talking about battle of Britain type scramble. And we'll see the people. So, just looking ahead to what we have planned for the next hour or so. The next display is usually one of the additions to the flying programme. In fact, I can see it just taxiing out onto the runway now, right to the left-hand side. Many of you in the local area have come out on the Cosford Station, University of Birmingham Air Squadron, and our huge thanks to all the members of UBAS who will be having our programme here years ago, and it's very nice to see it in the marking of the South Vietnamese Air Force, not the colour scheme you see very often on display aircraft here in the UK, and it carries with it through that colour scheme a really interesting story. So taking the runway, about to get airborne, and this is very short order, that being one of the most outstanding attributes. This is the Cessna L-19 Bird Dog. Importantly, the augmented construction to replace the area like having more went straight into action in the Korean War.
How are you sitting down for a Bird Dog? No way.
Of the US Marine Corps in Korea. Only one Bird Dog was actually flown by the RAF, or official RAF flight operating in Korea, and it was superior to the Oster AOP-6s that were otherwise being flown by the Brits in Korea. Nonetheless, the Oster soldiered on. We only ever flew that one Bird Dog. You can see here it's a very manoeuvrable platform at low level. He landed on USS Midway, and he was the first Bird Dog ever to touch down on an aircraft carrier. Now I think we had a fairly brisk wind today, but that's a very slow speed path. It is indeed, and hopefully we'll give you the chance to look at some of the equipment this Bird Dog is carrying. Under the wings, you might have noticed it's got 8 2.5-inch incendiary rockets, which were known as Willie Pete's. Of course, these are dummies for display purposes. Those were used for part of the role that Andy was describing earlier, marking enemy positions. And on top of the wing, you can see there's a huge 8-foot-tall wind antenna, and that was used so the aircraft could maintain communication with the ground station when it was getting very low down. Just a reminder that there's a very important rendezvous point we should point out. It is the yellow and white striped marquee, which is in front of our commentary position, but more importantly, and what you should see is it's in front of the air traffic control tower here at RAF Cosford. It is our information point, and it's also a lost... So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're about to go back to the Royal Air Force for the next display and to tell you all about it. Here is Flying Officer Seb Wilson. Speed into height for his first manoeuvre, the hammerhead. Flight Lieutenant Hughes was born in Carmarthen, South Wales. Started his flying career in the Royal Air Force in 1989, flying Queen of the Skies DC-10 and RAF Rifle. Then, Prince Rescue Pilot on C-Kick. From the end of this half horizontal, Bolt will push negative 2G to level the aircraft upside down for an inverted path. This is Bob's second year with Duke Display. He's operating at base height of 300 feet, except for the 2 final passes at just 100 feet.
You have to really shake your mind and think about it.
The shooter obviously is a first port of call for those people with experience with aviation in the Royal Air Force, be that Royal Air Force Air Cadets or University Air Squadron students.
Any walking like any landing guy can walk away from
the next manoeuvre is a ballistic roll, which Bob will use to gain energy for the next part of the sequence. Flying instructor on GFI on 115 Squadron based at RAF Wittering. He trains fellow frontline pilots into GFIs. During his varied career, Bob has amassed over 8,000 flying hours on 15 different aircraft types. This represents almost a full year in the air. After this half tuber, Bob will enter the 4-point roll. Get your cameras ready, it's a great photo opportunity. The tutor has a top speed of 212 miles an hour or 185 knots and can achieve maximum positive 6G. Next, we have another wing over, a combined pitching and rolling manoeuvre used to turn the flight path through 180 degrees.
You'll notice that every wing over is slightly different, as Bob carefully selects his flight path to cater for differing wing conditions and aircraft energy stations.
Got a bit lost.
Displaying the tutor requires careful energy management with low power-to-weight ratio. Bob now rolls 90 degrees while pointing straight up before completing a stall turn at almost zero airspeed. The two 90-degree turns allow Bob to continue in the same direction. The tutor is operated by Number 6 Flying Training School in partnership with Falcon International, primarily flying University Air Force students and RAF Air Cadets. There are 13 air experience flights across the UK and offer flights to 20,000 cadets each year. This could be you if you're between 13 and 20 years old. 50 air cadets a year are now being taught to fly the tutor up to solo standard. After this conventional stall turn, Bob will enter the slow roll. During this low roll, you may have noticed the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund parked on the belly of this aircraft, seen since 2022 to celebrate this fantastic charity. The Benevolent Fund supports Royal Air Force personnel, air cadets and veterans wherever they are in need. We are proud to raise awareness for a charity that gives so much to the whole of the RAF family. Please start ahead or to your tutor display leaflets and website to access the QR code to donate to the Benevolent Fund.
Is it? Yeah, 20
For those of you that are considering going to university, there are 15 university air squadrons across the UK. On the squadrons, students are taught by the tutor by highly experienced military flying instructors like Bob. It's worth mentioning that the UAS flying syllabus does include solo aerobatics. UAS is also provided here at the showground, especially the corporate STEM hangar. There's some amazing stuff in there, absolutely is. One of the hangars away to the left-hand side, as you look out, has the Jaguar up on its jacks. Here really for other purposes than making a nice display area at the air show. It's used for dispersed operations training, isn't it? It is. And that is where you can find a very it sounds like it's a couple down. But it's a sensation that we're going to see forming on the aircraft as it goes through its phases today. Now this is something very special indeed. It is Brian Taylor on the roll.
Oh, yes.
Power coming from the pair of Eurojet EJ200 afterburning turbofans, 13,500 pounds of thrust without afterburner, 20,000 pounds with afterburner engaged, and it powered the aircraft.
cancellations allowed. You run out of
somewhere in the region of 120 knots, and here, Andy, is where the digital fly-by-wire control of the Typhoon really come into play. They do indeed. There's nearly 100 control movements a second. This aircraft is performing just to hold this very steady, and also provides what's known as carefree handling. The pilot can't take the aircraft outside of its element. You've got roll control from the small, what are known as flaperon, the combination of flap and aileron on the wings, the flaperon, and those canard forefaces. If ever there were an aircraft that's an example of Anglo-American cooperation in military aviation, this aeroplane, the North American Mustang, is it. Because it refused to meet a British requirement. Famously, a British purchasing commission in New York City was on the search for potential new American-built fighting designs for the Royal Air Force during 1940. One of the companies they visited was North American Aviation in Dallas, Texas. We had the idea that potentially North American, which was still quite a new company at that point, albeit already building the Harvard trainer, one of which we'll see later in quantity for the RAF, could build the Curtis E-40 for the RAF under license. However, North American had other ideas. It came up with a design called the NA-73.
A couple of windows broke. Chipmunks were falling down.
Highly advanced fighter in aerodynamic terms. The aircraft newly went through flight testing and was earmarked for operational service, and indeed did service with both the US Army Air Forces and the RAF, known to the Americans as the T-51, fairly short order, also known as the A-36, as a ground attack dive bomber platform to the Americans, in which role it was very successful.
Even Peaky went, turn this here and yeah.
So all that was with the Alice D18S engine, also equipped most Curtis P40. Very good engine for operations of the low-level role. It rather ran out of pump at altitude, so this aircraft wasn't initially able to fulfill the potential that was certainly evident in the design as a high-altitude, long-range escort fighter. So that's where Britain again really entered the story, because the then commanding officer of a unit based in Duxford called the Air Fighting Terminus, which evaluated the aircraft capabilities of the RAF during wartime, Ian Campbell Ord, was talking to apprentices, a man called Ronnie Carter, who served as liaison test pilot for Rolls-Royce. And between them, the idea was hatched that it would be a good proposal to engine this, as I say, very streamlined fighter, and thereby transform its performance with a Rolls-Royce Merlin. A Mustang was newly converted with a Rolls-Royce built Merlin. It was test flown at the Rolls-Royce factory airfield in Hull. The transformation was clear. Rolls-Royce took to fulfill the sort of demand that was required, though, to produce the Merlins for Mustang production on top of Spitfires, those Lancasters, and the like. So that was where Packard entered the story in the United States, licensed producing the Merlin, and this was where the legend of the Merlin Mustang was born. Towards it, so you can at least keep sight of the runway for as long as possible. In this case, out to the left-hand side of the canopy, and then keeping the aircraft straight at the last minute, looking left and right, hoping to see the edges of the runway, and then you should be well. Also, and if you're down the front of the crown line, you may well see this in the next few minutes. So just looking ahead to what we have planned for you in the next hour or so. Below Iceland, Reach Pair, the Chipmunk, prepared towards about 10 to 2. Down to the very sector. Gone flying in or flown in the past of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flights Lancaster, as well as there being production in Canada. It was designed by a Polish emigre, one Severon Jakimiuk, who was the chief engineer of the de Havilland Canada, and Francis Barr, who was the director of de Havilland here in the pulling up into a very close formation loop.
because I've seen a formation, Aerobatic Chipmunk display. Solo aeros, yes, but not in formation. I think the last I remember were the Caledonian Chipmunks, about 10-15 years ago. Up in Scotland. We had them displayed in this. Yes, I've seen the likes of John Remain and been found to perform formation aeros Chipmunks at Duxford. But this, as I say, a new departure for the vintage pair this year. An initial 3 loops. Turning tightly as they come up to the right-hand end of the display line, and of course maintaining close formation and these low-powered aircraft like this is very challenging. You can't just focus the throttle and suddenly accelerate or hit the brakes and suddenly slow down. You've got to, in aviation we often talk about being ahead of the jet. We use Army Air Corps historic aircraft like this. And here is the second display. And even in its primary role, certainly with University Air Squadrons and Air Experience flights, and stayed in service to the end of the 1990s. I mean, that's an incredible record. Yeah, 1996 was when the final ones were retired by the AES, at that stage in favour of the Scottish Aviation Bulldog, which had also replaced them with the University Air Squadrons. And then, of course, now we have the Grand Tutor in this role. And they were still in service with the Army Air Corps until 1997, with their basic fixed-wing flight at Little Warren. But don't forget the other role Chipmunks played in RAF service. One of the most famous was clandestine photographic reconnaissance with the RAF Dassault station flight in what was then West Berlin. The Allies had the right to fly around the Berlin control zone, and they used the opportunity for reconnaissance with various helicopters, but also light aeroplanes like a fleet of Chipmunks. And one of the last Dassault station flight Chipmunks, one of the two, was the Battle of Britain Memorial flight today. In towards us for a lovely crossing break. And nice to see two colour schemes represented here, Andy. The earlier silver with the yellow trend bands, and the later red and white. Indeed, the red and whites for me is the sort of real characteristic colours, yeah, for these aircraft. All in Norfolk flying air cadets during the summer. We used to call it support command colours. Support command, absolutely. The Chipmunk was always a super display aeroplane as they come in for a crossover. You have a test pilot, Pat Phillips, to put on fantastic aerobatic displays of Chipmunks at Farnborough back in the 1950s, and there were later several display teams of them in the British military, the Blue Chips and the Skylarks in the RAF. And later, my favourite was the grey hatch pilot carrying on flying the performance basic flying training for the Army. As was of course done on the Air Experience flights, yeah, which this aircraft was a stalwart, obviously, where so many retired air officers would see out their careers in instructing, taking cadets for their first experience. You sit next to Flying Officer Smith and you realise, no, he's Air Vice Marshal. Yeah. Not mentioned how it's used by the BDMS, the Chipmunk, also represented by the one leading this pair here, still used by all sorts of civilian operations for much the same purpose as it has ever been used, providing elementary tailwheel training. And we've said this often about a few aircraft in today's show, but have you ever heard anyone say much of a bad word about the Chipmunk's handling? Absolutely not, absolutely not. Certainly one of those aircraft that just has enough about it to not let you get lured into a false sense of security, which is just what you want in a training aircraft.
another very fine break right on the display data. Yeah, that's the key thing, and that's something we'll come on to the Harvard later. Nostalgia, but a wonderful display in the present day. So again, we just have a couple of moments. We're going to move a few aircraft as soon as the Chipmunks are vacated. We have the Dutch Spitfire to get airborne. And we have the Beech 18. That's a nice two takeoffs there together. That's going to shepherd the Strutstone Jaguar. The Beech 18 cleared to take off as well. A very useful twin-rated engine, light transport, particularly of the Second World War years, used by the RAF, notably with Southeast Asia Command, but also elsewhere, as the expedite. Are very heavily engaged in operational duties at the moment. That's what they're there for. They are instruments of air power. We're just delighted for any glimpse we get. One thing that's interesting about these aircraft, they can be equipped with both of the standard air-to-air refueling systems, namely probe and drone and the flying boom system.
Are you guys okay?
Maximum operational flexibility. There it is, and it's very rare appearance out to our left. The NATO multinational, multi-role tanker unit, Airbus A330.
Yeah, do you want to go for a walk? Let's go on the stealing jacks.
Next weekend.
Yeah. Well, you're not down this way, are you? You got a glass. I play little, big. I was going to say, give me the shot. I'm very clear, isn't it?
A fabulous first for Cosford. There you can see the probe's been extended. UK favour a different way. We use the probe and drone as opposed to the flying boom that you see here. This aircraft capable of using both methods to refuel. Now we stick with Dutch contributions to today's show. Over Omaha Beach, the other half of the kill was saved by another Spitfire, today's still famous, well now converted as a two-seater, Mike Lima. Now for its last manoeuvre, Royal Air Force Airshow historic flight, the Spitfire. An incredible survivor, not just because of all of those combat operations it undertook towards the end of World War II, but also from what happened after it, because it was used as an airfield decoy for a time at Eindhoven, and then number 14 Squadron of the RAF, quote, liberated.
vertical rocket flying climb. Then a flight return over 1,200 kilometers. selection. This next path is dedicated to all service members, their families, and the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Say goodbye with gratitude, power, and pride.
Aerobatic competition flying, and that was the beginning of her career, which has seen multiple French national titles and international ones as well. She was an Airbus A320 pilot for her national airline Air France, but she decided to leave to focus on aerobatics, and also her company AirNL, which specialises in communications, sponsorship and aircraft sales and rentals. She also represents various other organisations through her aerobatic flying. She was the best placed woman pilot in the 2023 Advanced Level World Championships, and then last year she won the British International Open Aerobatic Championship, becoming British National Champion and the first British, or in her case Franco-British woman, to stand on a mixed international podium with an FAI medal. That's the Fédération Aerobatic body for sport aviation, including aerobatics. Rolling in the vertical. Turns of a spin. Showing us the very crisp handling of the extra, as Melanie then pulls vertical once again into a hard lift with a series of edge tumbles at the top. 2.5 turns of that, a figure often referred to as a rod. Pulling vertical once again with a hesitation roll on the way up. The speed once again bleeds on. And here she descends into a knife edge spin. Heading towards you, descending slightly, returning. Multiple further rolls and then a hard 90-degree negative G turn. Heading into a vertical climb, which I expect to terminate in a negative flick eventually. Exiting inverted, again very, very uncomfortable for her. Continuing into and through the vertical. And a complete outside loop described there before heading back away from us. Ouch, that looks very uncomfortable indeed. A thick roll at the apex. A 4-point hesitation roll on an upward 45-degree line, followed by a tumble, and now that excellent power-to-weight ratio comes into its own as Melanie brings the extra 330 into effectively a hover, very nose high. Isn't it easy to see why she's won all of these titles at competition level, but also gained such a reputation on the International Aerobatic Display Circuit as well. A lot of use of negative G in this display, as in the turn. Spreading her wings further on the circuit. Climbing to regain some height, putting the smoke back on. Powering after diving back in towards the display line. This almost called the B-axis at 90 degrees on to the main A-axis along the runway. Pulling up, showing us the power of the extra with multiple vertical rolls, transitioning into an upward tumble, and then a spin turn at the top, and descending back down towards the display line. Amongst so many other accolades, Melanie in 2016 became the first to compete in the very famous Ripple Air Race World Series with multiple podium finishers to her name and a victory at Indianapolis, no less, the famous Indy Motor Speedway in 2017. Aircraft very much at the cutting edge of the modern unlimited aerobatic art. Extended rolling tail slide. Coming towards the edge of an absolutely exceptional display of individual aerobatics here. Hesitation there on a diving 45. Again, pulling up. A series of rolls, and then a brief push into negative G, and again hanging it on the prop. Because they need to keep their self in the zone for the job ahead, and then afterwards, by the time you've locked and chopped the aircraft, done all the sort of saying about how useful a Harvard still is, and one reason why there are so many of them around, because this dates from 1942, this aircraft. It's one of the older Harvards still around in airworthy condition. Built in Montreal, it served in Ontario as part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. Then it was the Swedish Air Force. For a long time it was a ground instructional airframe. It returned to but then in 2016 it was bought by a Chinese aircraft. And guess what? He's now displaying the Hurricane, flying it a great deal, flying it to the big foul boats in Duxton, Headcorn and elsewhere. And so much of that down to this aeroplane.
Yeah, that's a great story. And then you mentioned it does today what it did during the 30s and 40s, bridging that gap between the elementary fighters of the day, mainly the Tiger Moth back then, and the frontline fighters, the Spitfires, the Hurricanes, the Mustangs. In today's terminology in the Royal Air Force, this is a hawk, and it fills that gap. It's the one that takes you from learning basic airmanship to
Why did it do all of that so well? Well, it was such an excellent advanced trainer for all sorts of reasons. Pretty powerful, that 600 horsepower engine.
Also quite often used in different disguises in film roles, of course. I'm thinking of Tora as the Zero, and also as a sort of non-specific ground attack aircraft in A Bridge Too Far, quite early on when Horrocks' 30 Corps get bogged down in the early part of the ground war, where they call up the ground attack aircraft. They are definitely Harvards.
Yes, there are several Harvards on strength with the Royal Netherlands Air Force historic flight, whose Spitfire and Beech we saw earlier, and several of those, I think, were involved in that filming. Nearly 15,500 of these aeroplanes in all variants were built. And it wasn't just with the British Armed Forces that they served for a very long time. The South African Air Force brought its first Harvard into service in 1940. It retired last in 1995. And they had 55 still on service for a farewell flypast to mark 55 years of use on retirement. And that was far longer than we use them for as trainers for sort of everyday Air Force use. The final wings course, the course on which RAF pilots get their wings to pass out on the Harvard, did so as far back as 1955, but they soldiered on, as I said, at Boston Downs, supporting test work. So, by on a historic flight for a little while as an advanced tail tracker trainer.
Operating on a tail-dragging aircraft is a very different experience. There's so many different forces that are at play. We keep talking about and kept on strength to teach people how to fly tail draggers because they are quite rare today, and it's a very difficult skill. Typified by this aeroplane coming in for its final pass before departing, the Nordang Harvard 2B. Heading back to its base at White Waltham in Berkshire in the hands of Mike Collett. And Mike's someone else who's built up to flying.
A very warm welcome from RAF Cosford to the pilots on their arrival. So please put your hands together for the 2025 Royal Air Force Aerobatic team. It's the Red Arrows! to our world famous Diamond 9. The aircraft slowed to approximately about 120 miles per hour, reaching a height of over 5.5 to 6,000 feet, as Red 1 brings that Diamond 9 down and bends it round to the right. Red 1 this year, once again for his second year as a team leader, is squad leader John Bond, known as Bondy. Bondy's actually done 7 years in the team. He did 5 years in Reds 2 to 9, taking a year out and then becoming Red 1 last year. He's a former Typhoon pilot, and he also flew the Tucano as a qualified flying instructor, where he flew the Tucano display aircraft in 2012. Now moved into 9 Arrow. The smoke will come on once again. It's the Red Arrows. On the right hand side of Red 1 is Red 2. That's Flight Attendant Rob Thomas. Rob is in his first year on the team. He was taken from training and made straight into instructor on the Hawk T1 with 208 Squadron at RAF Valley. He then completed his training and moved to the Typhoon Force, where he served on 3 Squadron on operations over Iraq and Syria, as well as an instructor on 29 Squadron, the operational conversion units, all based at RAF Coningsby. You'll now see those wings, all the... You can hear those commands from Red 1 and almost to the bottom and monitoring that delivery. That's because we fly off formation by ear rather than by eye. This means that the pilots on the outside of the formation are putting their inputs in just a little bit earlier than those on the inside to ensure that the formation moves as one rather than a ripple effect down the wing. You now see Reds 8 to 9 slip behind the rest of the formation to form once again the shape of one of the most iconic aircraft ever to float in history. From the left, the smoke comes on in the Concorde. On the left-hand side of that centre stem, closest in at the front, is Red 3, Flight Attendant Andrew McEwen, known as Matter. Matter again is in his first year on the team. He's previously flown the Aviate B, a Harrier variant with on exchange United States Marine Corps, before then returning back to the UK and flying our newest aircraft, the 5th generation F-35B, with 617, the Dambusters at RAF Marham. You now see Reds 2 and 3 make their way forwards and the rest of the formation to form a Delta formation. And in celebration of 20 years of the Royal Air Force Typhoon display team, from the right, this is Typhoon! Typhoon being the Royal Air Force mainstay, before joining the TR4 Tornado Force, where he got an AFC for his service on operations over Afghanistan. Coming in from the left to celebrate the Royal Air Force new capability in space and cyber, this is Apollo. There are 11 pilots in the team. We have Reds 1 through 9 displayed in front of you. We are, of course, commanded by Officer Commanding Rafat, Red 11 Wing Commander Adam Collins, former Tornado GR4 pilot. Also flew the Hawk in the aggressor role with 100 Squadron and an F-111 while on exchange with the Royal Australian Air Force. And Wing Commander Collins is in his final year as Red 11. You now see him split once again with Red 6 and 7 in trail. Royal Air Force Cosford, get your cameras ready for the colourful and noisy Big Vixen. On the back of the aircraft, underneath towards the back, the air brakes are out. That's a small door sticking out the belly of the aeroplane. In certain manoeuvres, we fly the air brake out. It makes the pilots fly with a higher throttle setting, thereby producing a hotter engine gas temperature. It makes the smoke burn a lot more brightly, and it also creates an air disturbance outside the back of the aeroplane, making that smoke billow a lot more fuller, and therefore in certain manoeuvres we use it to enhance those manoeuvres. You'll now see Reds 6 and 7 sit behind Red 1 in the stem, Reds 8 and 9 in trail, as they come around to the right for one of the most popular, if not the most popular, the Red Arrows fly. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get your cameras ready. It's tornado time!
My turn. Go. And roll.
8 and 9, roll goes. Reds 8 and 9 roll around the rest of formation. Watch for the colour change as Red 1 brings them down the line. As we start the second half, it's the more dynamic, heart-pumping, jaw-dropping formation, and we're starting with the same formation as last year. It's the 5-4 split. And in the second half, we now operate in two distinct sections. Off to the left, you've got Reds 1 through 5, known as Enid, named after Enid Blyton's famous 5. And off to the right, Reds 6, 7, 8 and 9, known as Hannah, named after Squadron Leader Ray Hannah, one of the first members of the Red Arrows. He's the first team leader to lead the team for 4 years. He took the team from a 7 to a 9 and formed on world famous Diamond 9. Enid from the left, Hannah from the right for the colourful 5-4 cross. Disappear to our left, keep your eye on Enid, who come round to the left and stay in show centre.
It's been disappointed that I've missed 2.
You'll see Red 4 coming in from the right to sit behind Red 1 and Red 5 in trail on Enid. Number 5, roll goes. Number 5 rolls around the smoke of Enid in the twister. Red 5 is flight attendant Justin Wales, known as Justin. Justin in his second year from Zimbabwe. He joined the Royal Air Force and street training. Red 6 and 8 to our left hand side, Red 7 and 9 to our right hand side. Hannah and the synchro pair are led by Red 6, the synchro leader, squadron leader Tom Hansford. Tom is in his third and final year on the team, a former Typhoon pilot and qualified weapons instructor on the Typhoon, where he was responsible for teaching all weapon tactics and technical information to the Typhoon force. And Squadron Leader Hansford received a DFC for services on operations over Iraq and Syria. Each pair will now dive down to only 100 feet above the airfield. They have a closing speed of over 800 to 900 miles per hour in the Hannah Pass. Red 8 and 9 go up and down in roller coasters, with 7 and 6 staying flat. Red 7 off to our right, Red 6 off to our left, pulling up, now it's up to 6G, making everything about them weigh 6 times heavier. To our right hand side is Red 7, Flight Attendant George Hobday. He's in his second year on the team, and once again he was taken from training, made an instructor on we the wingtip, pulling hard to disappear to our front. Look to your right hand side, you're going to be looking for Enid as they come in, the smoke will come on and they will settle themselves down in an inverted V. Look to your left hand side, you've got Red 9 smoking red as he flies to Enid in the Goose. Ollie Davis third here on the team. He's a former Tornado GR4 pilot and former qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T-Mark 2. As Enid disappears to our left hand side, look directly to your front and once again you're looking for the synchro pair led by Red 6. You can just see their nose lights twinkling in the distance as Red 6 pulls up Red 7 in tango formation. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get your cameras ready. This is the one you do not want to miss. It's the world famous Synchro Heart.
Yeah.
And coming in from the top right to spear the heart is Red 8. Red 8 is Flight Lieutenant Richard Walker, an extremely experienced aviator, having flown the Harrier as well as the Typhoon, as well as being a qualified flying instructor on the Hawk T-Mark 2. Let's give the synchro pair and Red 8 a massive round of applause for wonderful horse over the skies of Royal Air Force Cosford. As the synchro pair disappear to our rear, look to your opportunity to see our red, white and blue, which is only capable due to the smoke pod under the belly of the aeroplane. Those smoke collars are selectable by their own button on the pilot's control column, and through the winter training we come up with a smoke plan, so we do not have they're pulling hard up to 6G to cross once again at the back of the circle. Note that the red becomes blue, the blue becomes red as they cross back towards the centre of the show display, completing the manoeuvre called Circus. Performs a barrel roll in the sky, leaving a snake-like smoke trail in the sky in the Serpent. I mentioned earlier about the blues. We are lucky to have 11 individuals who fly the back of our aircraft in between displays when they cannot make the full engineering complement. They are known as Circus. One individual with me at every display is Circus 10, that's AS1 Ewan Lewis. And he's out there today filming the display for safety and debriefing purposes. You'll now see Reds 2, 3, 4 and 5 move up alongside Red 1, now looking left and right along their shoulder line at Red 1, while maintaining 3 to 4G. The smoke will come on for the Tango. As Enid leaves to our front left, you're looking to the left now for Red 6 and 9, Red 7 and 8 from the right hand side. In the manoeuvre called Chainsaw. Red 6 and 9 in this, no more than 30 seconds, all the blood rushing to their brains. Fighting hard against that negative G, making that G suit work extremely hard and then rolling the correct way up. with a small amount of positive G to leave the display area to our front. Cast your eyes now to the left hand side. You can see the nose lights coming in from Enid.
Hannah, smoke off. Coming 6. 2 and 3. Roll. Good.
2 and 3, roll, go. There's 2 and 3, roll to the outside.
Go.
Clear, go. As Reds 4 and 5, roll to the outside. One of the hardest maneuvers for our new pilot, Houston, the master. As Enid leads to our right hand side, look directly to your front. Once again, you're looking for the aircraft of Hannah. You should be able to see Red 6 rolled round by Reds 8 and 9. As Red 7 hides in the smoke of Red 6 in the Tempest. Once again, Red 7 and 9 off to our right hand side, Red 6 and 8 to our left hand side. The synchro pair once again will pull up to approximately 1,000 to 1,500 feet. Turn back towards the display line for their final manoeuvre of the show. Once again, each aircraft down at only 100 feet. That close speed of over 800 miles per hour. Each aircraft will perform a barrel roll, followed by inverted flight in a manoeuvre called the crossbow. As the synchro pair roll the correct way up and disappear to our rear, look to your front, you're looking for the nose lights of Enid, now joined by Reds 8 and 9. Ladies and gentlemen, Red Arrow! Put his smoke on, he'll gather the rest of the formation and they will make their way back to our home base at Royal Air Force Waddington in Lincolnshire. If you enjoyed our display, please look us up online. We have our own Facebook page and Instagram page, Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team Red Arrows, RAF Red Arrows on Instagram and Facebook. If you'd like any more information about the pilots, you can follow me, RAF Red 10 on Instagram, and you'll be able to find all the rest of the pilots. As I said, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to perform for you today as RAF Cosford. As I said, this is my final year on the Red Arrows. I want to thank everybody for the support I've given over the last 4 years. I hope to see you all again in the future or in this season. But however, please take care of yourselves and thank you very much. Goodbye! Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight.
does that.
can't remember what the rest of it.
That's what they're saying, because obviously because of that, it's not following to the point.
There's not a lot of it. Typhoon. Something got to pilots and get in World War II was down there with the last ship and across the curve, and I could see all these tents coming towards me, we didn't know what to do, no one's on me. You have to go hard left, otherwise you go curve, and found out the hard way, just pulled off over the map. Otherwise it was spin.
Yeah. Just little knock and that's first time doing that.
Doing a bit of a tour and it's like the years and I didn't go to them, this was it. There's a guy and I see one
A final victory roll there from the Battle of Britain veterans, Spitfire 2 of the Royal Air Force. And here they come in from the right. Some flight time, while also being suitable as an advanced demonstration. So they bring on the airframe, they get extra armour protection. This is an upgraded version of the Rolls-Royce flight jet engine, and produces 4 underwing weapons hardpoints, which can carry gun packs, bombs, truck tanks, and so forth, which we will see demonstrated towards the end of this exercise. We will, because this is where we start the pyrotechnics for the Army Air Corps roll demonstration. But sadly, technical reasons with the attack ball, Kenya, England, Ecuador, and Sudan, and a few of those used them in anger in combat. Ecuador did so, South Yemen, but particularly Oman. Very nice little manoeuvre here, coming towards on the 45-degree line, and both doing a roll under in order to turn away. Well, then the Sultan of Oman Air Force, now the Royal Air Force of Oman, using Strikemaster a great deal in a conflict known as the Dhofar Rebellion. Communist-backed rebel forces known as for this role was crucial in terms of allowing the aircraft to return to the combat zone much more quickly than the piston engine promised, and get that support for ground troops that much more rapidly. Plus, of course, the armament was far more potent. They could carry 32 Zero rockets, or a combination of 16 of those rockets and a pair of 540-pound bombs, as well as the two 7.62mm machine guns. They also had a rudimentary night attack capability, which later was made possible through using target illuminating flares. And there was the role of the show of force, very important in all sorts of conflicts over the years. A major demoralising effect was had on the enemy forces. Navigation lights on as the two Strikemasters run in straight in front of us, and they're coming in for a break. And indeed, that story told so well in Road and White book Storm Front. Yeah. It really takes you into the cockpit. Indeed, I think 3 Strikemasters were lost in that action at Beerbat, July 1972. Yeah. The contract pilot, the Omani Strikemaster, and the other types in Oman service for delayed action, heavier weaponry there. Lining up their run-in on the enemy target. And as they pull up, they've delivered the coup de grace. That's a lot of firepower for the Strikemaster. Certainly was. And we ought to note, I think, Andy, that the first time we've had to Royal Navy helicopter displacing the Black Cats airborne at some point fairly soon in order to get their from the Black Cats. Off they go. Nice to have them back as a pair. Yeah, it's been a while, and they've got to find a certified plane, get back. In the next 15 minutes or so, that will be quite interesting.
ladies and gentlemen, approaching from the front left in the flying diamond formation, followed by a looping, the amazing and internationally renowned PC-17 of the Swiss Air Force. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the great and unique Swiss Air Force PC-17. Not only gives the team its name, but also makes it the largest turboprop aerobatic team in the world. Dynamism, elegance, and precision, that's what the Swiss PC-17 stands for. With interactive formation changes and varying figures, these military pilots offer an extremely professional flying display and document the performance of the Swiss Air Force. You already observed the next formation change into the Super Flash, and now the next change into the formation called Delta, our largest formation, with a wingspan of around 70 meters, equal to an Airbus A380. And you can observe now the next formation change in only a few seconds. The new formation is ready now. This is called the propeller, and bear in mind that the distance between the aircraft is 3 to 4 meters and the speed of around 350 kilometers. The next formation change into Artemis. It looks like a rocket. Delivers 550 horsepower. It has a maximum weight of 1,900 kilograms. This is equal to a medium-class passenger car. It reaches a maximum speed of 270 knots, and this is definitely faster than the fastest Ferrari or Porsche. And it has a climb rate of 10 meters per hour. Since 1982, these PC-7 training aircraft have been in the service of the Swiss Air Force and are used for basic training of all the military pilots. So our soloist will now wave you goodbye. He will show you a tango. You can wave back to him with your hat or with your hand or whatever you wish. Captain Andreas Meknik, the Mexter, directly out of the front aircraft from the air. Powerful version of the Bristol Pegasus engine, slightly swept back wings, a longer rear fuselage, and the ability to operate on either wheels or floats. Such an outdated aeroplane in a leading role. Heading in for a break. Of the Swordfish being in service in such numbers when war broke out illustrates the sort of complacency and muddled procurement that often took place during the 1930s. This is an aircraft that has a cruising speed of just 90 knots or 104 miles an hour when it's lightly laden. That
is reduced to 82 knots, or 94 miles an hour, with the underslung torpedo, and you can see this Swordfish is flying with a dummy torpedo under the fuselage. The crews had no accurate torpedo sight to calculate the all-important layoff that was required to aim the torpedo properly when attacking a moving target. Perhaps the most famous action by the Swordfish was the sinking of the Bismarck in May 1941. They actually hit it twice. The first strike was by aircraft of 825 Squadron. As the war progressed, Swordfish had a major role protecting the vital supply convoys through the Atlantic and the Arctic Ocean, flying not just from carriers but also converted merchant ships. They were active on D-Day, hence the invasion stripes that have been painted on this one, laying smoke screens and conducting anti-E-boat patrols. The last one wasn't built until August 1944. The final operational squadron soldiered on until August of 45. Testament to the Swordfish's versatility that it outlasted its successor, the Fairey Albacore, although that really only enrolls other than its main torpedo bombing purpose. But this was one of the great British aircraft of the war. And this one from the Navy Wing's Heritage Flight serves to represent all of the fleet air arms Swordfish and the heroism of the crews who flew them. Pretty long flight for the Swordfish today, operating from its base at Yeovilton in Somerset. And this, as we were saying, it's such a slow cruise speed. They've actually got 3 on strength with Navy Wings. This is the only airworthy one at present. Hopefully their Mark II will very soon join it in airworthy condition. There's a third that's been used as a source of spares and so forth.
Rishi, I'm taking my badge. What is that?
The latest generation of multi-role helicopters, specially procured to operate from the frigates and destroyers of the Royal Navy. These are MHA-2s, MHA standing for Maritime Helicopter Attack. I give you the Black Cats. First break, the aircraft cross each other, what they call the 180 cross.
as they run back towards Crown Centre. Your camera's ready, you can see they're closing for the flat cross. Wildcat is crewed by pilot and observer. Also fitted with armoured, crashworthy seating for up to 6 additional troops. So the aircraft situated on the back of destroyers and frigates, they had to operate in incredible weather conditions, both in terms of wind and sea state. So this kind of precision that you're seeing demonstrated this afternoon is absolutely essential. This is the climbing carousel. The aircraft nose to nose at each other, climbing to around about 500 feet, while also revolving through the 480 degrees. When they top out, they're both facing each other. Now they need to get out of that manoeuvre. They're going to do that by spot turn away from each other. Watch for the steep nose down. This time both aircraft angle out onto the 45 left and the 45 right, just to give you another perspective. As they pull up into another wing over manoeuvre. As they come back to Crown Centre, there's a big handful of cyclic within the aircraft into a rapid but controlled climb, again up to 500 feet or so. You've seen a nose over in one direction, now in the other. Variety of weapons, up to 20 marklet missiles for use against small surface vessels, and up to 4 larger sea venom missiles, armed with a 30-kilogram warhead, able to disable and destroy vessels up to 1,000 tons, and also carry the Stingray torpedo, the Mark 11 depth charge. So a little greeting for you coming up here, aircraft transiting rearwards, and then dipping their nose in salute. Again, watch closely. It's another signature manoeuvre. Sometimes done along the axis. This is done away from you. This is the over the shoulder transition. Today's program.
what? Two of the most iconic warbirds in history. Not where's the Chinook?
The Swordfish was doing it.
As the aircraft turns in for a downwind quick stop, they will simulate a late spot at the landing site to offload troops and vehicles, either on or off the battlefield. In the back, they're being efficient with their recce, making sure it's suitable to land on in the minimum possible time to avoid any threat exposure. Having found their site and making their approach, crewman Josh up front will be giving voice marshalling directions to Cal, talking him forward and down onto the landing site and monitoring the height of the aircraft as she comes into land. On the ramp for you today is Flight Sergeant Dave Sims. Born and raised in Margate, Kent, he joined the RAF in September 2021 on that quad bike, if you will, to see just how critical these enablers are at working fast. With troops and quad bike on, the aircraft departs from over-the-shoulder transition, a defensive manoeuvre presenting the floor ballistic protection towards any probable threat. This gives the aircraft and any occupants the greatest possible chance of protection. With the aircraft turned away, Cal climbs the aircraft to return and provide some mutual support. Think of this profile as overhead protection for the troops now exposed on the ground, or alternatively, it allows a pair of Chinooks to land in sequence without any loss of airborne protection. We don't have any guns fitted for you today, but if we did, you'd see Dave and Josh ready to employ the crew-served weapon systems. The Chinook can be fitted with an M60 machine gun on the ramp and two M134 miniguns on the port and starboard sides, each of which is capable of firing 3,000 rounds a minute, or 50 rounds a second, and making one hell of a noise. The Chinook and its crew can protect itself and deter engagements anywhere in the world. As they dive away for another wing over, it's time to introduce our co-pilot. Joined the RAF in 2016 and got his wings in December 2021. He spent his first 12 months showing them off to air cadets by flying them and other air experienced passengers in the Grog Tutor from RAF Wittering. CJ's the baby of the team, joining the front line in 2023. Feel free to call him a crow if you see him. He's an avid fan of Formula One, and when he realised he was too tall, he decided to become a Chinook pilot. Forget the revs of F1, CJ, the best noise in the world is that bit of blade slap. The crew are now positioning for a fast rotating approach, decelerating rapidly to accurately dispatch troops on a tight or otherwise unsuitable landing site. Think about rooftops or the deck of a ship, but today it's in front of you, lucky devils. In the starboard door you can see Josh kicking out the ropes ready to supervise the dispatch of troops, while Dave does the same at the ramp. Unfortunately, due to operational commitments, we don't have any troops to demonstrate for you today, but you will still see the ropes go out. Up to 30 troops begin departing a hovering Chinook in less than 2 minutes for that profile. Not just troops, stores of kit, and even some
furry land sharks, more formally known as military working dogs, can go down these ropes, often giving the enemy pause for thought as they miss them by a whisker. Cal's departed with another over the shoulder. Dave has jettisoned his ropes at the ramp, but Josh is now working hard to pull his back into the cabin. So let's watch him getting a sweat on and introduce him at the same time. Sergeant Josh Lyons is a Staffordshire lad. He joined the RAF in 2014 as an aerospace systems operator and was posted to Scampton. In 2017 he made the right choice to retrain to aircrew and became a weapons systems operator. In his 5 years on the Chinook force, Josh has accumulated over 1,200 hours on Chinook, completed multiple operational deployments, been on the Queen Liz, and conducted overseas exercises in Sweden, Denmark, Poland, Cyprus, Jordan, and the US. Outside of work, he enjoys travelling, skiing, and for his sins as a season ticket holder at Wolverhampton Wanderers. Well, for those of you who were keeping an eye on that JHSS team on the ground, the crew are now returning in to pick up that quad bike, which has been rapidly re-prepared by JHSS as an underslung load. Underslung loads are the bread and butter of the Chinook force, with all crew members front and back working together to manoeuvre that 99-foot-long aircraft into a finely tuned position. That's 99 feet and 8 inches, if every inch is important to you. Cal's positioned in the overhead of the load under Josh's direction. Dave is looking through the centre hatch to safely direct the pickup of that quad bike, and all four crew are working in synchronisation with the team on the ground beneath the hovering aircraft. You may notice some of the hookers holding their arms up. One is holding a static discharge probe or zapper snapper. They make sure to touch that hook first to dissipate any static electricity, which is critical in dusty environments like the desert, saving a nasty shock. As they transition away with that quad bike, they're watching the swing. Chinook is used in operations moving stores, freight and vehicles everywhere from Afghanistan to Whaley Bridge. The Chinook can carry 3 underslung loads simultaneously and carry up to 11.3 tons on its centre hook alone. This quad bike attached to the aft hook weighs just 350 kilos, but if it can be rigged, the Chinook and the hookers can take it. This capable aircraft is even able to pick up another Chinook, albeit with a few bits cut off to save some weight. With a maximum all-up mass of 24.5 tons, this workhorse can comfortably fit 30 troops inside, with seating on the floor up to 50. The raw power and versatility of the Chinook is all down to its iconic tandem rotor design, giving you that whacker. It provides a huge amount of lift, a large cabin, and is all achieved without any of that dangerous messing about with tail rotors. Into a wing over, and they will now be positioning for a running landing. As they approach 0 speed, those of you on the right-hand side of the crowd will get to see a Chinook party piece, one of the only helicopters in the world that can reverse on 2 wheels. As the aircraft sits once more, Dave Wave 6 is going to have the best seat in the house, on the ramp looking out on all these lovely people here today. In case you can't spot him, he's the one waving with gigantic orange hands. Those are definitely his real hands, and he can be quite embarrassed about them, so make sure to give him a big wave as he goes past.
please, the demo is at an end. So one more time everyone, please put your hands together for the 2025 Chinook roll demonstration.